The following is an excerpt from a longer conversation between my son, Ben Wagner, and me on May 10th, 2020. Enjoy.
I was going to say that Klassy and I watched a documentary earlier today. It's called "The Game Changer," and it was produced by a lot of people, but including Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jackie Chan. And it was a sales pitch for veganism, but it did a really good job. That was the best, most convincing argument in favor of veganism I've ever seen. It was, man, they had like world-class athletes and, all these people and scientists. I mean, they had all the credentials, all the authority, everything. And then, so of course, my first, I mean, we were both just like, wow, that was really convincing, right? And so I wanted to hear what the other side of that argument was. So I just typed in fact check on the movie The Game Changer and on YouTube, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, including a couple of things from on Joe Rogan. He had
No, I was
guests
gonna
on that
say
talked about that.
I think he had one of the directors or the creators of it, because there was a firestorm that came down raining on that guy's head.
Well, it was so good. Oh my God, it was so convincing.
Right, and then there was a lot of people being like, "That's bullshit." What he was saying. There was a lot of stuff in there that was completely non-factual. Apparently, I didn't
I
watch it.
caught two of them, but I don't know a lot about the. I mean, they were talking about like what it does in your chemistry in your body, blah blah blah. But there was a couple of things in there that I was like, well, I know that's not true, or it was misleading. Like for one, they showed this is this is the length of a carnivore's digestive system, and this is the length of a human's digestive system. So clearly we're not made, all carnivores have these really short digestive systems. They do most of their digestion in the stomach, in the acids in the stomach, and they don't have a lot. Their intestines are very short. Anyway, humans are much longer. However, I remember, and that's all they said, which was like, wow, that's very convincing data. But I had read this really long article in Scientific American that really stuck with me, where they were saying you can tell by looking at the intestines of an animal what they eat. And those that like fruit eating animals have a shorter intestines. Specifically, they have a shorter colon in the second part, the lower intestine, because they need to get they're basically just deriving the sugar out of the fruit. That's all they're doing. And so they have to eat a lot, and they have to have a lot of throughput. It has to get out. I mean, just get the sugar, because you can get sugar really fast out of fruit, and you just get the sugar and get rid of it, right? But if they eat leaves like gorillas do, they need a really long intestine, and a really long, specifically lower intestine, because that's for fermenting foods, right? There's bacteria, they break down the fibers and stuff like that. They produce fatty acids. Your intestines absorb that. That's how they get their calories. They have super long intestines. And what they said about humans is that we are right in the middle there. We're kind of like, clearly we're an omnivore. We have relatively long intestines for a carnivore, and really relatively short intestines for a pure vegetarian. So basically, they didn't say that because this is back before they Richard Wrangham's Catching Fire book, but they basically, our intestines have evolved to eat cooked foods of both meat and vegetables. But anyway, it was misleading the way they said it. It's like, look how short the intestines are of carnivores, and look how long the intestines are of humans, without saying, and look how much longer the intestines are with actual vegetarians.
Right.
So it was misleading. So that was one, and then they said something else that was kind of like, that's not right. Oh, there's this
Wait,
guy.
so if a human just is a vegetarian, like if you compared my intestines and I eat meat to somebody who just is a vegetarian, is there going to be a substantial difference?
No. No,
Okay.
the intestine doesn't change. No, this
Okay.
is something that has evolved over, a couple million years.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, it doesn't change your intestines. But the other thing that they said in there is, this guy was talking about how, the brain runs on glucose. and that's the only thing it can run on. And I'm like, well, I know that's not true. Right now, my brain is running on ketones, fat.
Right.
I haven't had anything to eat, and I'm on the end of my 5th day.
Whoa, buddy.
Out of sugar. I was out of sugar the first day.
Right.
I was already in ketosis on the 2nd day. My brain is not. I am fully in ketosis. You know how there's like the level on those keto sticks that you pee on.
Yeah.
You know, there's 5 levels.
Yeah.
You know, deeper and deeper ketosis. I'm in level 5. I've been since yesterday, so I am not burning any sugar, and my brain is running just fine. You know, so it was like to hear somebody say just very directly, like, oh, you know, your brain runs on sugar. It needs sugar. You know, it's the only thing it burns. You're like, okay, well, I know that's wrong. So what else in this whole thing is wrong? That's why I wanted to look up, you know, facts, because it was so convincing, man. I mean, you can make anything convincing, I think, if you're in control of the video.
Right.
You know, you can present whatever you want. Like that lady presented the thing about the intestines. Like it was accurate. What she said was accurate. It was just misleading. It was just incomplete and therefore misleading. You know, and so, but very convincing. If you didn't, and who knows that? Nobody knows that. I mean, how many people know that weird fact about the intestines? I mean, who's going to read a huge article in Scientific American about intestines but me?
Right. Right. Yeah. No one.
But what's funny is the reason I did read it, and the reason I was motivated to read it even back then, was that I was curious, because there's, you know, vegetarians have as much propaganda as anybody else, and I had heard lots of vegetarian propaganda very convincingly saying that our intestines are clearly a vegetarian designed intestines. So I was curious. That's why I read the article, and totally not true. I mean, we are adapted to eating lots of plant foods. There's no doubt about it. But we're not adapted to eating only plant foods. I mean, people can survive that way. It's not like it's a problem if you're smart about it.
But I would say it's almost pretty easy to see that. I would say, actually, maybe it's not easy to see. What do you think would be easier for the human body, to eat only meat or to eat only plants? What do you think we're more designed to do if we had to choose one?
I would say meat. And the reason I say that, I mean, it probably might not make you live longer, but it actually might make you live longer. But I can say this, that if you are a purely vegetarian diet, you have to be smart about it. You have to make sure, because, you know, B12, for example, isn't very much available if you're not eating any animal foods. And B12 is super vital. And there's another one that's super vital, and you really can only get it from animal products. And so, you know, if you're a vegetarian, you have to make sure that you go out of your way to make sure that you get these nutrients, including protein. If you just ate, you know, bread or whatever, you would not be as healthy. And as a matter of fact, when agriculture was developed, it was really easy for archaeologists to tell when somebody had shifted to agriculture, because they were shorter. They had their bones weren't as strong. They had more heart disease. It was clearly not good for people to shift away from to eat more carbohydrates and starches, basically. Their teeth were more rotted out, stuff like that. They were less healthy than hunter-gatherers. But what I was going to say is that if you eat meat, you don't have to worry about any nutrients. You can get all your nutrients from meat. But if you eat purely vegetarian, you have to be careful about it. You have to make sure that you get those nutrients. You know, and they do that. Like B12, I think they use brewer's yeast because it's high in B12. You know, which is a kind of, and not something you'd find in the wild. You know,
you know all those brewer's yeast trees.
And another thing that's kind of a selling point for meat, I guess, is that of all of the hunter-gatherer societies ever studied in the world, not one was vegetarians.
Even there's never been one.
Never been one that any archaeologist or cultural anthropologist has ever seen. I
So
mean,
are
there may
we
have
kind of
been
in
some
uncharted territory in terms of that? Or
vegetarianism.
have there been, well, no, in terms of like an entire society or an entire village or an entire section of our populace? Like, was there a big vegetarian movement, back in the Roman days, or anything like that? Like,
Funny you would say that, because in that movie, The Game Changer, they talked about how the Roman gladiators were vegetarian. Now, I somehow I don't believe that, but that's what they said in this movie. It's actually where the movie started.
yeah, I think that was one of the topics that Joe Rogan was talking about, because he knows fighters,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of the backlash was coming from like the MMA sector.
yeah. They had a thing about Gregor McConnell fighting a vegetarian, and Gregor McConnell is kind of famous for eating a couple of steaks a day, and
Yeah.
and in that bout, he got his ass kicked.
What you're talking about, Conor McGregor?
Conor McGregor, yeah.
Yeah,
What did I say? Gregor McConnell?
yeah.
Okay, close enough. You know what I mean.
Yeah. At first, I was like, maybe there's another fighter close to that.
Yeah, but he was all boasting beforehand and was actually making fun of the other guy for being a vegetarian and stuff like that. And then he got his ass kicked. So and they did a lot. They talked to a lot of really world class athletes that were vegetarian, and saying how much better how much better their performance was, how much strength they gained, how much more endurance they had, blah blah blah. So it was super convincing, man. It was like that was the most. I mean, I've actually tried to be a vegetarian a couple of times in my life, because I read this thing called Diet for a Small Planet, and
Mhm.
their argument was that that basically, you're growing crops like soybeans and wheat and whatever, barley, and you're feeding it to animals, and they take some of that protein and make it into meat, and then you're eating that meat. So you're taking, I think it's 16 times for cows. You're taking 16 times the amount of protein, giving it to the cow to get 16 pounds of grain to get 1 pound of meat or something. It's like, it's just super inefficient. And that's the reason why they keep, mowing down the rainforest and stuff like that. They need grain. It's for producing meat. It's just super inefficient way. And if you could eat this food directly, then you'd be better for the planet. So anyway, I read that a long time ago, but I was probably 19 or something, and it really struck with me. It stuck with me. I was like, maybe I should be a vegetarian. So a couple of times I've tried it, and I didn't feel well. I don't know what I did wrong, but I didn't feel well at all. As a matter of fact, the second time I did it, the last time I've been a vegetarian, I was after about a month. I got really nauseated, like I was kind of permanently nauseated and
Hmm.
couldn't eat. Like it just went on until I finally had some eggs, and I instantly felt better. So I don't know what I was doing wrong, but
Well, isn't it
I know.
interesting that I distinctly remember growing up and being at the grandparents' house and having all of our cousins, and how many of them were vegetarian in the
Yeah,
beginning.
Jody and all her
Like,
family, Mike and all his family.
they were all vegetarians, and I
Yeah.
remember Joan would always, it would be like me and her like making fun of them or something. Like, oh, these wusses or whatever can't eat
Yeah.
meat. Ooh, it's so scary or something. And and the whole tofurkey debacle of one Thanksgiving,
I had that
and
once.
oh god, but it's interesting to see them all sort of switch, and I know they did it at different times, but I don't think any of them are still
No, they're not,
vegetarians.
and they did it for health reasons. Basically, I think it was uh, Amira and Jody both had deficiencies. Their doctors recommended that they do something about it because it's not healthy to have those deficiencies. I don't remember what they were. I don't even know if I ever heard what they were. But
Hmm.
and then Bob, good friend of mine, he's been a vegetarian for a long time, and he did the same thing. He now eats fish, I think eggs too, fish and eggs and cheese. But for a long time he was a vegetarian. And yeah, it was like everybody in my life was a vegetarian except you and me.
Yeah, my sister as well.
Klassy.
My sister, I think she's allergic to pork. Pork makes her actually ill. So she didn't eat pork or beef. Oh, I don't know if she ever stopped eating chicken. But maybe she was an actual vegetarian for a while, but she started eating chicken, and then recently, within the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, she's actually reintroduced a little bit of beef into her diet, but she still doesn't eat pork. And same with Cole. Cole was a vegetarian for a long time. I think that's true. I think he was a vegetarian for a while. Yeah. And he did it because he just thought it was gross. Somebody I know was doing it just because they thought it was just inhumane or just not sanitary or whatever. It wasn't anything to do with health reasons or anything. They just something rubbed them the wrong way about these dead animals getting cooked up, and they just didn't like the thought of it, so they stopped. But almost every single person I know that was a vegetarian in my youth, not necessarily their youth, but in my youth, are all not vegetarians now.
Yeah.
I've never really considered it. I've actually considered doing the all meat thing, or like the meat and a little bit of greens, a little bit of salad and stuff. I guess that would be what the paleo diet. I thought about that, but I just like carbs, man. I like pasta. I like sandwiches.
I do
like
too,
pizza.
man. As a matter of fact, it was donuts. A really lousy time to watch that movie because they kept showing food, and I'm fasting, and they kept showing carbs too, and I was like, oh god, that looks good. I must have said that 10 times during that movie. Oh my god, it's all steaming and stuff. Oh man. I'm doing better today though. I feel better today.
That's good. 5 days. I don't know that I've ever gone 5.
I have never. This is the farthest I've ever gone. The longest I've ever gone before was 4.5 days.
Yeah, I want to say mine was either 3 or 4 days. I can't remember.
Okay, that's our podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. You can find out about our other podcasts at theatombomb.org. This is Adam Lee Kahn on The Atom Bomb.